And it's my privilege to bring to you a word from the Lord today. Our Coffee and Connect question today was, are you a fight or flight type of person? And I'm sure there's a good story that goes with some of those that you remember, and I'd love to hear those sometime, and I'll make fun of you for it later. But, you know, we've all seen those movies where someone robs a bank, or when you're in the back alley at the wrong time, and suddenly the heroes of the story are always the ones that take out the bad guys. They just jump, and they just know what to do. Their instincts take over, and their bodies just have this way of, they tackle the guy, and they win the battle or whatever it is, and the police come and they say, wow, how did you do this? And they're all over the news because they have the fight instinct of, hey, I need to save someone. I need to do this. And I realized this past week that is not me. I am not going to be a hero. I'm going to be the flight person, and it's going to be great. I'll pray for that person that's in danger while I'm in the next zip code running away. And unless the Spirit of God is moving like the day of Pentecost, I'm not going to do those things unless God really directs me to do that. I am more of the flight person. I avoid flights if at all possible. I try to. But as I reflected this week, I realized that our world is kind of a flight or fight world. And it's becoming more and more that way, not just when we're in danger, but anytime we have a disagreement or something happens or any kind of tension. It seems like the number of people we can unite with in this world is getting less and less because we have to unite on at least 99% of things, or we can't be friends in our world, or we can't do this, or if I agree with you, what will other people think? They'll associate me with you, and I don't want to be associated with what you think or how you behave or whatever it may be. And so when conflict arises, we have a fight or flight kind of response. And either we fight in our relationship, and that ends the relationship sometimes, or we just say, I don't want to deal with that. I'm passive aggressive, and I leave that relationship. Or some of us have a fight and then flight relationship because we fight, and then we go ahead and flight anyway because we can't handle it, and we just leave, and it's really bad. But either way, we leave the partnership or the relationship, and the disagreement turns to we're going to disassociate really, really fast. And the little group of people I can unite with is getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And it's a problem in our world, obviously, for obvious reasons. But I think it's especially hard because after so many fights, after so many arguments, after our communities get smaller and smaller, we find that we burn a lot of bridges. And so when the crisis comes in our lives, or the crisis comes in someone else's life, we go back to turn to the people we have in our life, and there's not many people left because we disagreed with them, or we didn't connect with them, or we just said, hey, you believe that, therefore I can't be your friend. And so we realized we have very, very few deep relationships in this world, and no one's there for us. We're not there for others. We don't even know how to be there for others because we've had those experiences. And it happens with friends, easily happens with friendships, but I've realized it happens with families a lot too. Families are supposed to be the ones that stick together. They're supposed to always be there for each other. And yet when they have these deep arguments and they don't know how to have disagreements, then there are rifts, and then there are divisions, and then you don't even have your family there for you when you go through a trial or a difficult time because you've burnt all those bridges already. Now, you may be someone like that in your life. I don't know. I know most of you, and I know most of you have those family members in your life. But some of us don't have those family members or don't have those close friends, or we know someone and they don't know where to turn when life gets tough. They don't even know how to ask for help anymore because they're so used to believing that no one's going to be there for them. So they just say, I'm fine, I'm okay, you're okay, it's going to be okay. And so where do they go when life gets hard? Or if I know someone else in my life, I see that they've burned a lot of bridges, I don't even want to be there for them. But I ask the question, how can I be there for them? I find out 2 years later they went through this hard season. They didn't tell anybody because they're just used to going through life alone. So the question is, how can we be there for others? And how can they be there for us in a world that doesn't know how to do that anymore? We don't know how to be there for each other anymore. Over the last couple of months, we've been in this sermon series, as you know, called Lament, Seeking Joy in the Morning. And we've been going through the book of Lamentations, which is most of us don't do that in our normal daily devotions just because it can be really depressing. We didn't even read chapter 5 at the end because where we stopped, there was kind of some hope. And by the end of the book, this question, is there hope anymore? And so, okay, we're not going to go that far in the book because there is hope. They just don't talk about it in that book. And so you may not be disappointed to discover today we're not going to be in the book of Lamentations. We're moving on to the book of Ruth, as you just found out. And as we go through this book the next couple of weeks, we're going to talk about specifically how do we not go through trials alone, and how do we help others who are going through these type of things when it's very uncommon in our world. So we read from Ruth chapter 1 today, and we were introduced to 3 women. You probably read about those women before, perhaps. But these 3 women responded to a crisis, and we're going to talk about how each of the 3 of them responded. Some of them were in more crisis than others, but how did they respond to their own crisis? How did they respond to someone else's crisis? And then we'll kind of reflect on our own lives and say, how can we learn from them? Who do we want to be like? Who do we not want to be like? And we'll go from there this morning. So obviously this is a book of Ruth that's about a lady named Ruth, if you didn't realize that already. But just as much, it's not just about Ruth. Much of what we read today was about Ruth's mother-in-law, and her name was Naomi. I had a friend who named her daughter Naomi, and I wasn't sure if that was a good thing or a bad thing. I thought, man, if your daughter's name is Naomi, she's going to go through a really hard life. It might be great in the end, but I'm not sure I want to name my daughter that. But the first few verses make it sound like Naomi's life is great, and then it becomes terrible really fast. In like 8 or 9 verses, life gets really hard for Naomi. For you and me, if Naomi lived here today, her life would be hard. But where she lived at that time, it was 10 times harder because of the culture of where she lived. So let me just summarize what had gone on in her life so far. We read about it, but let me just summarize what's happening. So first, we find out Naomi and her family, they moved to Moab. And for you and me, Moab might as well be on the moon. We don't really think about Moab or where it's at. Moab was a neighboring country to where she was in Bethlehem. It's where Jesus was born later on. It was a neighboring country, and she had sons who married Moabite women, which was not that big a deal in our minds, but for them it was a big deal because before that, Naomi's people, the Israelites, had been mistreated by the Moabites. And so God had told the Israelites, Naomi's people, when Moabites come to you and want to be part of your community, don't let them be part of your community. They do not treat you well. Please do not accept them for up to 10 generations. Eventually you can, but don't do that because they have foreign gods. They'll tempt you. They have not treated you well. And so Naomi and her family moved to this place because of a famine, and they don't know what else to do. Their sons want to get married. There's no one else to get married. I guess this is an emergency. We'll have to do this. And so she goes and they marry Moabite women. So Naomi's family is in a semi-hostile place, wanting to go back home, but they can't go home. Well, eventually, when she's there, Naomi loses her husband, which is hard, as many of you have gone through that, or you know someone who's gone through that. And then she also loses her 2 sons, and they'd been there for a decade and didn't have any grandchildren. And for that time period, that was awful. There wasn't Social Security, there wasn't retirement. You had your kids were your retirement. If you didn't have kids, you had no husband, you had no relatives in Moab, there's nothing for you. There's no one to support you. You were going to be living in poverty. And your daughters-in-law, they might live in poverty too because they have no husbands. You can't help them. They can't help you. You're kind of stuck. And it's kind of like you had each other at least. Like the mother-in-law had the daughters-in-law, but it doesn't do any good because they can't help each other. It's like if I was with you and your car broke down, that's great. You'd have me. But it wouldn't do any good because I would stare at you and you would stare at me and we'd say, great, it's still broken. We don't know what to do. Kind of like just dead weight right beside you. So Naomi loses her husband. She loses her 2 sons. And then they prepare to go back to Bethlehem, back to her hometown, because the famine's over and she says, there's nothing for us here. I have no relatives. Let's go ahead and go back home. Now, the problem with that, it sounds nice, but again, remember, she was in Moab. Her kids married Moabite women, and coming back, she didn't know if her community would accept them or not. They say, hey, you're not supposed to do that. Will my daughters-in-law be accepted? Will I be accepted? Will there be some shame? And so she said, well, I guess let's go back home. And she doesn't know whether that will go very well or not. So again, she was forced to go in the situation. She didn't choose to be part of Moab. It seemed like all the men in her life died, and then she returned to Bethlehem. At least that was the plan. So this is about as bad as you can get. Not many people were worse off than Naomi at that time. If you could imagine the worst possible scenario in your life about how things went really wrong, this is about where Naomi was in her life. So as I was reading it this past week, I thought to myself, well, what would I do? If I was in Naomi's shoes or sandals or whatever she wore, what would I do? What should I do? Like if okay, Jesus, if this was you, what would you do? Can we do anything? It doesn't seem like there's anything you can do. But if it was me, I would probably not go back to Bethlehem. I would hunker down and say, like my fight or flight would say, it's easier just to stay right here. I just want to cut everything off and say, nope, I know this place. I've been here 10 years. I might ask for some help from people around me, but I don't want to take the chance of going back, making the journey, and then it being worse because people I know or knew and loved don't care about me anymore. I think I would probably just live in poverty and bury my head in the sand and not know what to do. But that's not what Naomi did. At least that's not what she and her daughters-in-law wanted to do. So again, this morning I want to look at each one of their responses. How did they respond to this situation? And then how do we respond to our situations as well? By the end of the message today, we're going to talk about what it's like to live in a community. And I'll kind of challenge you to make a step in a certain direction the next couple of weeks. So that's where we're headed today. But let's start with Naomi. What did Naomi do? She was the most hopeless of all of them. She was the most destitute. So we'll start with her. What did she do when she had this happen to her? Well, Naomi had the least options. The least options available to her. She knew she was the lowest on the totem pole. And so when she was in crisis, what Naomi did is, I'll call it, she limited her losses. She limited her liability. She said, hey, I don't want to be a burden on somebody else. I'm already down and out. I want to at least give hope to someone else. And so this is what she said to her daughters-in-law, to Orpah and to Ruth. She says this in verses 8 and 9. But on the way, Naomi said to her two daughters-in-law, go back to your mother's homes, and may the Lord reward you for your kindness to your husbands and to me. May the Lord bless you with the security of another marriage. Then she kissed them goodbye, and they all broke down and wept. Now, life, like I said, was hard for widows at that time. For Orpah and for Ruth, it looks like Oprah. It's not Oprah. I read it like 5 times, and I'm like, it looks like Oprah. Oprah's not that old. But I realized when they're already destitute, they're not doing well. Their widows, the young women are widows, and they had a choice to make. They could have gone and said, hey, we're in Moab, mother-in-law, you go back to your hometown. It's better for us to marry. We're going to get remarried. We'll have another family. We'll have kids. We'll have a life again. But if they did that, they're basically saying to their mother-in-law, you're going to go be destitute and live in poverty and die all alone because no one's going to accept you. You can go on your own. We don't know how to help you. And if that was a tough choice, and basically what Naomi's saying is, I'm going to make the choice for you. Please don't think of me. Think of yourselves. You can't help me anyway. Why don't you just go stay in this land? You know these people. They know you. They'll accept you. Go and get remarried. You'll be better off without me. When it came to the hardest time of her life, Naomi limited her losses. She kind of fell on her sword, and it seems good and noble. It seems like this is the selfless thing to do, and this is what we think in our lives we should do, right? This is what we should do to love others, right? That might be what Jesus did, and yet that's not what God's best for her was. As we find out, as we'll continue to read the story, she was kind of just giving up when the times got tough and said, I don't know what else to do. And as we'll read later on, she just said, my life is bitter. God has cursed me with this. I don't know why. Maybe I have some sin in my life. Maybe it's because we went to Moab. We weren't supposed to. And so she gave up on God and she limited her losses. Well, she had 2 daughters-in-law, Orpah and Ruth, and they were in a crisis themselves, but it wasn't quite as bad as their mother-in-law. And so rather than look at how they responded to their own crisis, we'll look at how they responded to someone else in crisis. How did they respond to their mother-in-law who was in a bigger crisis than their own? So first we'll look at Orpah. And I think anyone who lives in the United States who follows Jesus, anyone here in our culture, if you're like me, you would probably respond like Orpah did. This is the most natural thing we would do and say, yeah, this is what people like Jesus should do. So what does Orpah do? She responds to reason. She was very, very reasonable, like we like to be here in our culture. So let me read about what she did. Verses 9 and 10, and then verse 14. It says, Then Naomi She kissed them goodbye, and they wept aloud. They said to her, her daughters-in-law said to her, "We will go back with you to your people." Well, Naomi objects, has this speech about this is unreasonable, it doesn't make sense. So finally in verse 14 it says, "And at this they wept aloud again. Then Orpah kissed her mother-in-law goodbye." And this is what many of us, this is probably what I would do. Like you offer your help and say, no, I want to help you. Please let me help you. And then the other person basically rejects your help and says, no, I don't, like this is not best for you. Please do your own thing. Most of us are not going to insist and say, no, I'm going to help you anyway. Like that's not how most of us are. That's not how we just accept the rejection. We say, okay, great, I'll pray for you. Let me know if you need anything, and I'll be here for you next time. And then they never let you know that they need anything, and you think eventually things are okay. Orpah wants to be there for Naomi, but she doesn't want to force herself on her mother-in-law. Says maybe she doesn't want me. She doesn't want my help. And she realizes, I can't do anything about Naomi's condition. I can't make her life less worse. I can't make it less bitter. I can be there for her, but I can't really fix anything. And so why end my own life, in effect, in order to do nothing for no practical reason? I think we've been there before. Many of us have wanted to help someone. We wanted to be there, but said, I can't really do anything for you. I can be there with you, but it would take a lot of sacrifice for me, and it wouldn't really make a whole lot of difference. And so Orpah responded with reason. And I think if it wasn't in the book of Ruth, if someone did that in our churches in the United States or in general, we'd say, okay, great job, Orpah, you tried to help. Great job offering your help. I mean, not everyone will accept your help, but good job attempting it. And then we come to Ruth's response. After both of their daughter-in-laws say, hey, we're going to help you, and after finally Orpah said, okay, fine, I'm not going to make you accept this help, she leaves. But then what happens with Ruth? It says she clings. She clings to Naomi because that's the only community she has left. Ruth clings to her community. This is what it says in verses 14 through 18. Then Orpah kissed her mother-in-law goodbye, but Ruth clung to her. Look, said Naomi, your sister-in-law is going back to her people, to her gods. Go back with her. But Ruth replied, don't urge me to leave you or to turn back from you. Where you go, I will go. Where you stay, I will stay. Your people will be my people, your God, my God. Where you die, I will die, and there I will be buried. May the Lord deal with me, be it ever so severely, if death even separates you and me. And when Naomi realized that Ruth was determined to go with her, she stopped urging her. She stopped urging her to leave. Last Sunday we talked about the importance of not being alone. And I gave the example of my son, specifically a 7-year-old, getting very independent, very self-sufficient. He can do things on his own without us. But at night, in the middle of the night, when there's thunder, he wants to know that his parents are close, that he's not alone, and he can't even fall asleep like he normally could because he's afraid. We talked about the importance of having someone with you. Even if I can't turn off the thunder or the lightning, having someone with you makes a difference. You're not afraid, and you can go back to doing the things you normally know how to do, that you've been taught to do. And we compared that how when we call on God's name, he is near to us. He comes close, and when he's close, not only then can he hear us, but we can hear him say, do not fear. And we don't have to be afraid when we feel like we're not alone anymore. And I think that's true not only with us and God, but it's also true with our community. When life seems bitter and empty, when we don't know where to turn, when you can't help me, it seems like, and I can't help you, it seems like God calls us to be part of a community that clings to each other. Because communities cling no matter what. Strength and hope and courage are found in togetherness. And even when Naomi has daughters-in-law, they can't give her any more grandsons. They can't give her any more sons even. Because if they do, they'll be abandoning her. She says, you're going to be a burden. And Ruth said, I can't leave you alone to die. She knows that Naomi needs a community, and she's all that she has left. And so she clings to her community. In the most difficult situations, when there's nothing you can do to help someone else, when there's nothing they can do to help you, being a part of community means you still cling to one another. Now, we don't often use that word in our day-to-day life. I don't say, I'm going to cling to you today. And mostly we use it like the fabric that clings to you, or we're talking about peaches that cling to the pit or not, and no one likes cling peaches. We don't really use that word cling very often. But the word cling in Hebrew that's used here is the word debak. And specifically, it's a word that means cling or cleave or adhere to. And the most famous passage that uses that word is in Genesis, where it talks about in the King James, it says that a man will leave his father and mother and he'll cling or cleave to his wife. The NIV uses the word united, and it means you're that close, you're not going to go back. Like once you're together, the intention is you're not going to ever leave each other ever again. It's normally used in the Bible to talk about family members, to talk about all the time of clinging that's used among your biological family. But this type of clinging, this unity, even though the same word isn't used, it's referred to in the New Testament as the unity that we also have among Christians. That same exact word, cling, is found, or a very similar word, is found in Acts chapter 9. The Apostle Paul, if you know, he used to be Saul. He was persecuting the church. He found Jesus, or Jesus found him. As he's turning into this amazing apostle, he goes to Damascus, and it says he attempts to cling or literally glue himself to the apostles. He wants to join them and to be leaders. He says, I need to cling. We need to cling together to be that close. We're not going to turn away from each other anymore. That's the phrase he uses. And later on, Paul refers to Christians kind of in that family setting, calling each other brothers and sisters. We cling together like a family would. He taught each other in the church in Romans 12 to treat each other with brotherly affection. And in that chapter, how do we do this? He says specifically, we are to mourn with those who mourn, or to weep with those who weep, and laugh with those who laugh. And that's what Jesus said. He said his brother and sister and mother were those who did God's will. And so that's what we're taught kind of throughout the New Testament, throughout the Scriptures. We're taught as we follow Jesus to be a community that clings to each other, that stick together like a man and woman cling together. They don't give up on each other. Kind of like a daughter-in-law or a daughter might do with a mother, saying, no, I'm not going to leave you alone. Even if I can't help you, at least you're not going to be alone in this. You won't have to go through it alone at all. See, if we're loving each other well and being loved, then no one in a community should ever have to weep alone. We should be like Ruth, who weeps with Naomi and can't leave her, even if she doesn't know what else to do. We are called to be one body with many members. The thing is that kind of unity is really rare in our culture. It's really rare in our world. Sometimes it's even rare in the church. Our culture seems to be programmed with danger, but also in any disagreement with a fight or flight. Like unless we agree all the time, we go right to fighting, or we go fly away and flee. We don't know how to stick together when things get hard. And usually those fights and flights lead to broken relationships. And then we have no one else. When times get hard, we think, where are we going to turn? And in the world of division, that's why we as followers of Jesus are called to something different. We're called to be a community for ourselves and for our own sake, but also to offer community to others who have none. And that's really hard some days, because sometimes the person's not going to accept it. They're going to say, nope, I'm just fine. And it's really hard to say, what do I do now? I can't necessarily force you to be part of community, but I can be there no matter what, and I'll keep checking on you, and I'll be here. And whenever you're ready to turn around, I will be right there with you, to weep with you, or to cry with you, or to laugh with you, or to rejoice with you. So you might say, okay, Pastor David, what can we do? How can we learn to be a community that clings in a world that fights and flees all the time? What can we do? Well, first, I think we need to identify in our lives, and I need to identify in my life, who a Naomi might be and who a Ruth might be. And sometimes that's in our local church. We find a Naomi, a person that they probably could count on you. You might not get much out of the relationship, but they can count on you. They may say, I'm okay, no, I don't need anything. But you know from the past, or maybe God just put on your heart, they rely on you. Who are the Naomis in your life? Maybe you only have one. Maybe God hasn't revealed it to you. And who are the Ruths in your life? People God is sending you to love you and to care for you in your time of need, or maybe to care for you right now. You don't have a time of need yet, but you're going to, and you're going to need that person in your life. Who are your Naomis and who are your Ruths? And the challenge this morning is kind of twofold. The first is to ask God, who are those people in my life? Reveal to me who you're calling me to love, who you're calling me to care for. And the second part is when God reveals that to you, the challenge is to make either 2 phone calls or have 2 conversations, one with your Naomi and one with your Ruth. Or the one with your Naomi could say, okay, hey, how can I pray for you in this season? What's going on in your life? Tell me about it. And when they say they're okay, eventually, if you do it over and over and over, eventually you'll find out what's going on. You'll find out that life isn't as great as they might say to everyone else. And with your Ruth, it might be, let's get coffee and catch up soon. It might take you some time, and eventually you might get to the point where you can be vulnerable and say, hey, I just need to share this with you. This is really hard, and I don't know how else to tell anyone else about this. That's the challenge in the next couple of weeks, is to call your Naomi and to call your Ruth. You might only have one of those people right now, and that's okay. It's really hard when you have a Naomi and you have no Ruths in your life. Say, everybody's a Naomi, everybody needs this help, and I have no one for me. It might start that way. But we find out, for someone like Ruth, she was a Ruth literally to her mother-in-law. And over time, eventually, as she blessed someone else and loved her mother-in-law, God blessed her and gave her Boaz, gave her children, as we'll find out, blessed her in amazing ways. But it started out, she had no one. All she had was her mother-in-law, who needed her more than she needed. And eventually, God blessed her. Communities cling. And in this world, if we don't cling to each other, eventually we might end up as helpless as Naomi, or people around us might end up as hopeless as Naomi. Well, before we transition to our normal roundtable discussion today, we'll have a couple minutes just to reflect and to be quiet before God. And I want to put some questions on the screen. There'll be our discussion questions in just a minute. But before that, let's just take some time to be quiet, to reflect, and you can ask these questions in prayer and just kind of reflect on them. So here are the questions. First, can you relate more to Naomi or Orpah or Ruth when you're in your season right now? Kind of where are you? Secondly, have you ever experienced this kind of clinging community before? Have you seen it? Have you been part of it? And then what keeps you from embracing that kind of community? Maybe you've had a past life where people just keep leaving. I don't want to cling to my community. They're just going to move away. Or I've been hurt before. Or is there something that I need to talk to God about, that something keeps me from really clinging to my community? And then finally, what other questions might you have? What else might God be saying to you that you need to kind of reflect on and pray about? So let's take some time to pray, and then in a few minutes I'll transition us to some roundtable discussion today. So we'll have some, if you want to use stuff, you can play some quiet music, and let's take some time to pray before God today.